My name is Matthew. After spending 45 years on this planet, I've come to realize that no one ever wants to feel like a burden to the person they care about the most. When you truly love someone, your greatest hope is to be their comfort, their safe place, not an added stress. You want to be their support, not someone they have to tiptoe around. But when that balance begins to shift, it starts to feel like your presence is more of a strain than a source of warmth. That's exactly what happened with my wife. I began to notice her drifting away, emotionally and physically. And when I asked her what was going on, she looked at me and simply said, "I just want to be alone for a while." I didn't want to push her, so I chose to respect her wishes and gave her the space she asked for. But her reaction wasn't what I expected. She didn't respond well to that space. To understand why she became so distant, I'd have to take you back to the very beginning. That's where it all really started. Gina, the woman who would eventually become my wife, and I first crossed paths at a small local book club. That's where we met. It started quietly, just two people who shared a love for stories, exchanging small nods over paperbacks and sitting silently through thoughtful pauses. We were both naturally introverted, so our interactions weren't loud or energetic. Some evenings, we barely exchanged a single sentence. But I always noticed her. She was reflective, gentle, and deeply thoughtful. Little by little, we grew closer. First came friendship, then something deeper. Eventually, we began dating. I'll admit, I didn't know how it would turn out. We were both so used to solitude and living inside our own minds. There was a part of me that questioned whether two people like us could make a relationship work in the long run. But maybe that's exactly what helped us connect. In the early days, there were no grand declarations or expectations. No pressure to be something we weren't. If Gina needed silence, I respected that. And if I needed time to process my thoughts before speaking, she never rushed me. That quiet understanding between us was what drew me in the most. Over time, we learned each other's rhythms. We adjusted to each other's habits. It wasn't flawless, but it flowed in a way that felt natural. 3 years passed like that, peaceful, steady, and real. Eventually, we decided that what we had was worth building a future on. We got married in a small ceremony surrounded by the people who meant the most to us. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if we truly grasped just how much life would shift, not just in the world around us, but inside us as individuals. Right after the wedding, we moved in together, and that's when reality kicked in. It's the part no one really teaches you about, how to actually live together, day in and day out, sharing every space and every quiet moment. Both of us had always been private people, and during our dating phase, that had worked beautifully. We found peace in each other's company, even when no words were exchanged. That was one of the things I appreciated most about Gina. But becoming husband and wife and sharing a home brought a new layer to our relationship. The silence that once felt comforting began to carry a different weight. Our routines didn't clash, but they didn't immediately align either. I worked in banking, early mornings, long hours, deadlines constantly pressing in from all sides. My days were tightly structured. Every minute accounted for from the moment I stepped into the office to the moment I left. Gina, in contrast, worked from home as a freelance editor. Her work life moved at a gentler pace. She had the freedom to wear pajamas while proofreading a novel on the couch or to spend a quiet hour daydreaming by the window before getting back to her projects. Her days were shaped by creativity and flexibility. So even though we technically shared our evenings, we arrived at them in completely different states of mind. I was often drained, running on fumes, while she was just easing into a relaxed mental space. That difference began to stretch the space between us wider, even if we were sitting on the same couch. After spending entire days surrounded by people, I came home completely spent. Meanwhile, Gina was often still mentally entangled in the latest manuscript or article she had been editing. Her head was still elsewhere, in a different world. Even though we were often on opposite ends of the energy spectrum, we managed to find a way to make it work. We talked through things, learned when to give each other breathing room and when to show up for one another. It wasn't flawless, but we were both making the effort. One thing that helped us early on was that silence never felt like a problem. We were comfortable in the quiet. And in those early months of married life, even with the occasional hiccup, I truly believed we were settling into a steady rhythm. 3 years into our marriage, something began to shift, though I couldn't quite define it at first. Gina, who had always been more of a homebody, started behaving differently. I noticed she wasn't spending as much time around the house. She'd go out during the day and return more withdrawn than usual. Her phone started buzzing more frequently, and when I asked how her day had gone, her responses were short and vague. Just a soft, "It was fine," and nothing more. For a while, I convinced myself maybe she just needed a change, something new to break up the routine. But what truly puzzled me was that the more time she spent outside the house, the more distant she became when she was inside it. It didn't feel like balance, it felt like avoidance. Like she was running from something, though I had no idea what. I didn't confront her. That's not how we operated. Instead, I waited, watched, and gave her space, hoping that eventually she'd open up when the time felt right. But that moment never came. During this period, I tried to bridge the growing gap in subtle ways, little gestures meant to show I was there. But she'd meet them with a polite smile and a quiet, "No, I'm okay," before returning to whatever she was doing. At first, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But the pattern never broke. Days blurred into weeks, and I started to feel like I was revolving around her, close enough to see her clearly, yet too far to actually reach. I didn't want to seem clingy, so I stayed quiet. And what hurt the most was not knowing whether she even noticed the distance, or cared. Eventually, I hit my breaking point. One evening, after watching her return home with the same tired, disconnected expression she'd worn for weeks, I knew I couldn't go on pretending everything was fine. So I asked her directly. I told her I'd noticed she was out more often, that she barely spoke to me anymore. I asked if something was wrong. She kept her gaze on the floor and quietly replied, "No, everything's fine." But I knew better. I'd been with her long enough to see past those empty words. So I pressed a little further. "Come on, Gina. I know you. Something's bothering you. This isn't just in my head." That's when she finally stopped dodging the question. She looked up and said, "I just need to be alone for a while." For a few seconds, I stood there, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "Do you mean, you want a break?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, not a breakup. I just need space. I need time to figure out what I'm feeling, and I can't do that if I have to explain it all when I don't even understand it myself." And with that, I let go. I stopped trying to hold onto something she clearly didn't want at that moment. That conversation switched something off inside me. What she didn't realize was that her emotional absence had already been weighing on me for weeks. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from trying to reach her, trying to decode her silence. Now that she had finally voiced it, I made a quiet decision of my own. I stepped back. I stopped asking if she was okay. I stopped waiting for her to come home. I stopped wondering where she went or who she was with. I gave her all the space she said she needed, even if it meant detaching from the woman I once thought I'd never live without. The days rolled on. Weeks passed. Then a month. The only conversations we had were strictly practical. Did the rent go through? Your package arrived. That was it. We spoke like co-workers who shared a break room, nothing more. At first, she didn't seem to mind the silence. But after a while, I noticed something shifting. She started lingering in the kitchen if I was there, like she wanted to start a conversation but didn't know how. Sometimes she'd open her mouth like she was about to speak, only to pause, close it again, and quietly walk away. I wasn't sure whether I should step in or just continue giving her space. So I stayed quiet. I didn't want to make the same mistake by pushing again. Then one night, we passed each other in the hallway, something we'd done 100 times without a second thought. But this time, she stopped. She looked at me and said softly, "You haven't asked how I've been in weeks." I paused, met her gaze, and replied in an even tone, "You said you needed time alone. I've just been honoring that." She didn't protest. Instead, she gave a small nod, as if unsure what kind of response she had been hoping for. Without saying another word, she turned around and walked away. About a week later, everything came crashing down. It was late, and I was getting ready to call it a night when Gina showed up at the door of the guest room. She stood there uncertainly, hovering in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to come in or retreat. Then she quietly asked, "Can we talk?" I didn't move, didn't offer a warm welcome, just looked at her and replied, "Talk about what?" She hesitated for a second before saying, "You haven't said a word to me in weeks. It feels like you've given up on us." Her voice wavered, and her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then, suddenly, everything spilled out at once. "I didn't mean for you to shut me out completely." I kept my voice steady, but the words came out firm. "You asked for space, and you never explained why. You wouldn't open up. I didn't want to force you into a conversation you didn't want. What else was I supposed to do?" She looked caught off guard, like it hadn't even occurred to her that I might have simply respected her request. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I didn't think you'd take it so literally." I looked at her and said, without emotion, "I stopped guessing a long time ago. If you wanted me near, you should have said so." That's when it all unraveled. The next words out of her mouth were, "I don't even know who you are anymore." I didn't answer, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was too tired to keep speaking into silence. I had spent weeks trying to understand someone who no longer seemed to want to be understood, until now, when things got uncomfortable for her. Still, she kept going, almost like she was trying to stir a reaction out of me. At last, I asked directly, "Why did you push me away?" She didn't reply. I tried again. "Why are you trying to talk now, after all this time of keeping me at arm's length?" Still nothing. Her eyes turned from mine. She couldn't even bring herself to meet my gaze. That's when it hit me. I was done. Done asking. Done digging for honesty from someone who once promised to be my safe place. So I walked away. I went back to the guest room and shut the door behind me. That was it. No dramatic finale. Just a quiet end to yet another conversation that led nowhere. After that night, the cold silence between us resumed like nothing had happened. We still lived under the same roof, still passed each other like strangers in the hallway. No more attempts were made to bridge the gap. Nothing changed. Then, one evening, I was walking past the hallway when I heard her voice. She was crying while speaking to someone, her words broken, breath shaky. I froze when I heard my name. And then another name followed, one I hadn't heard in years. Her ex. She was on the phone, probably with a close friend. I stood still, invisible in the hallway, and listened as her voice cracked through sobs. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she said. "I reconnected with him, my ex. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. We didn't plan for it to go anywhere. But being around him, it made me start questioning everything. I started wondering if I married the right person." A chill ran through me like a flood of ice, numbing everything from the inside out. My legs buckled a bit, and I had to steady myself against the wall. Almost without thinking, I pulled out my phone and hit record. I'm not even sure why. Maybe I needed something tangible to hold on to, something that confirmed what I was hearing was real. Gina kept talking, her voice shaky through sobs, still on the phone with her friend. She spoke about how reconnecting with her ex had stirred up emotions she thought were long buried, confusion, nostalgia, doubt. But then her tone shifted. She said spending time with him reminded her why things had fallen apart in the first place. He hadn't changed. He was still trying to mold her into someone else, still controlling, still critical. Then came the words that cracked something in me. "I took Matthew for granted," she said. "He never tried to change me. He never made me feel like I had to be different. He just let me be." She fell silent for a beat. Then she added, "But now it's like he's not even here. He doesn't ask where I go anymore. It's like he doesn't care. I don't even know how to reach him anymore." Her friend jumped in then, trying to comfort her or offer advice. I wasn't really listening anymore. I had heard all I needed. It hit me like a slow, cold wave. She had to revisit an old flame to realize what she had with me. And in doing that, she didn't just betray my trust, she dismantled it. I walked into the room still holding my phone, though I didn't need to play it back. My voice was low and flat when I said, "I heard everything." Her head snapped up. She looked like I'd just struck her in the chest. Her face went pale, and fresh tears spilled down. She rushed to explain, tried to say it didn't go anywhere, that she ended it, that the experience only made her realize how much she wanted me. But all I could hear was that I had to be emotionally lost to her before she remembered my worth. She reached out to touch my hand. I stepped away. "I'm devastated, Gina," I said. "But more than anything, I just don't trust you anymore." She cried harder, begging, promising she'd do anything to fix it. But her pleas couldn't change the one thing that mattered. The moment she let someone else into her heart, even for a second, she left me standing alone in the life we were supposed to be building together. And I'd learned something too. Not all wounds are meant to be patched. Some just need space to heal. That was the beginning of the end. The final days before I made my decision felt suffocating. Gina tried again and again to start conversations. Sometimes it was just her saying my name softly, like she hoped I'd respond with forgiveness. Other times, she poured out apology after apology, repeating the same explanations I'd already heard. But I was done listening. That week was one of the most emotionally draining of my life. She'd cry behind closed doors some nights. And then Monday morning came. I walked into the kitchen. She was there, making tea. She looked up when she saw me, eyes wide with a flicker of hope. Like maybe I was about to say, "Let's give this another try." Instead, I handed her a manila envelope. She stared at it, and even before she opened it, the tears returned. It was over. Of course, she pushed back. She asked if I was sure, pleaded with me to try therapy, promised she'd change. But therapy can't erase betrayal. It can't unring a bell. No amount of talking could undo the moment I realized I was her second choice, only appreciated after a comparison to the very man who once broke her. Eventually, we agreed to separate. In the weeks that followed, she didn't stop trying. She texted, suggested counseling again, kept reaching out. But I told her the truth. I can't pretend to fix something I no longer believe in. If it takes losing me to realize I mattered, then I don't want to be part of your picture. I refuse to be Plan B. I refuse to be the man you had to doubt before deciding he was enough. She cried when I said it. I ended the call before she could say more. Still, she didn't stop. She sent short texts. "Hope you're doing okay. I miss talking to you." I stopped replying. "And now, I'll ask you something. If you were in my shoes, if the person you gave your calm, your loyalty, your quiet love to made space in their heart for someone else, even for a fleeting moment, would you fight to keep them? Or would you walk away, like I did? Let me know in the comments. And if this story struck a chord, if it echoed a decision you've made, or one you're facing, go ahead and like the video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because sometimes the most painful endings are the ones that finally lead us to peace.